Hi friends, welcome to IISN College Connect YouTube channel. In this videos, we are going to discuss about one-to-one relationship between two tables. If you are new to this channel, please click the subscribe and bell button. And also, if you like this video, please share this video with your friends and don't forget to click the like button. So before we are proceeding to this one-to-one relationship, you should know aware of the CRUD operations on the Spring Data JPA. So if you don't know about what is a Spring Data JPA and then CRUD operations, so I already posted the videos based on this particular topics in the so you'll be find this video on my playlist. So let's move to this what is one-to-one relationship. Here, one-to-one relationships is nothing but, so here you see we having the two entity. One is student info, another one is what? Student academic record. So here, that is one entity is going to be associated with exactly one instance of another entity. Here, you see we having the student info entity, which is going to be associated with the student academic records. In this, one instance, that is a record of one particular student, Vinod Kumar, is going to be associated with only one record which is there in the student academic record. That is what one-to-one relationship. As you know that one students can have only one academic record. So that is what one-to-one relationship. Here you see we are going to use another key term which is called as unidirectional. What is a unidirectional means? Okay, so this is a parent table. This parent table should know aware of this which table it's get connected. Okay, so that is only one direction. Okay, so from the parent table to the child table. Okay, so that is what the unidirectional. Okay, so bidirectional means child table know about the links which in this which table it's associated. That is which parent table is going to be associated. That is what the bidirectional is. So unidirectional means what? Parent table know the relationship to this child table, but the child table don't know the relationship. What is called as a unidirectional. Okay, so and one more thing, key point you should know is here in this parent table, we are going to call in the Spring Data JPA, which is called as a owning table. It is an independent table, but this is what child table is called reference table. So here, this table is depend upon this parent table. So that it is going to be called as a reference table, and this is going to be independent table that is called as a owning table. Okay, so let's see how to write the coding for this particular logics. So for that, what we need to do, so we need to use one main annotation that is 1 to 1. Okay, so and that should be followed by we having set of properties we are going to write under this annotation. Hope you understand what is a one-to-one relationship. So we are going to deep dive into this, how to write the coding for this particular logics. Let's move to the demo part. So here I'm going to create a setup for this one-to-one relationship. Here I'm just going to use the Maven and then language which I'm going to choose as Java. Here I'm going to use the versions which is going to be 3.55 and project name which I am going to choose as www.iasn.121. 1 to 1. Okay, so here project is I'm just going to give it as basic 1 to 1. Okay, so uni. Okay, right. Okay, so here I'm just going to give the description as 1 to 1, 1 to 1 uni. Okay, so here the jar file and version I'm going to choose is 17. I'm going to add some of the dependencies which is required. Okay, so for developing a Spring Boot application, I'm going to add the dependency Spring Web, and then I'm just going to add the another one which is going to be dev tool, and then so another dependencies which I need is MySQL driver, and then we are going to deal with the Spring Data JPA, so that we need the dependencies Spring Data JPA. So here you see these are the four dependencies which is required for implementing this particular operations. So I'm just going to click the generate button. Here you see the infrastructure file is get created. I'm just going to open this file on the IDE. First I'm going to extract this file. Now you see it's get extracted. I'm going to open this file on IntelliJ. here is it. We are having the file one-to-one uni. Okay, so how to open the file means, so in case if you don't know about how to open the projects on the IntelliJ means, it's very simple. I'm just going to show you how to open it. So first you need to get into this IntelliJ. After that, you're going to have this open button, right? Okay, so here you're having the open button. Inside this, you can choose where this particular file is exist. Okay, so you need to unzip it and then you can open it. Okay, so here you see I already unzip it. I'm going to open it now. Okay, so now you see the file is going to be get open. Here you see we're having this file structures. Under this, I'm just going to give some of this uh, folder structure. Okay, so we need the first folder structure, which is going to be controller. And also you need to know one thing. So all the files should be created under the package name is called com.iisn. Okay, so for that, what you need to do, you need to right click over here and then click and then choose the package. Okay, all the package should be comes under com.iisn.1to1.basic one-to-one uni. Okay, so here under this, I'm just going to create controller, and then I'm just going to create service file, and then I'm just going to create entity, and then I'm just going to create repository. So first what we are going to do, so first we are going to create an entity class. Okay, so this entity classes name I'm just going to give as student info. Under the student info, I'm having some of the variable. The variable name which I'm having is private, private int id, and then I'm just going to create one more variable, private string student name. As I already told that we need to use a camel case. Okay, because JSON is going to be deal with a camel case only. Okay, so private string string student department. Okay, that's it. Okay, so here I'm just going to use some of this JPA Spring Data JPA annotations. That is, first one is going to be what? Entity. Okay, so what is the main purpose of entity? Okay, so which I already discussed on this previous videos. Okay, that is a Spring Data JPA CRUD operation. This entity is used to create a table for us. Okay, so that entity annotation, and then we are going to give the table name as by using a table annotation. Okay, so we can give a name on our own. Okay, if you don't like the student info, if you want to give anything else, okay, so what you can do, you can just give any name, whatever the name you like, you can give it in the double quotes. Okay, so student underscore data. Okay, student underscore data. Okay, so here the next thing I'm going to deal is, so that is primary key. Okay, so what is the use of at id annotation means, at id annotation is used to create a primary key. That is, it is this particular variable, that is particular column is going to be hold the unique values. So how to mention it on this? By using at id annotation, we are going to be mention this particular field is going to be hold only the unique values. Okay, so in normally how we are going to create the primary key on the table, create table, table name, and then that should be followed by column name, and then we are going to use a primary key, right? Okay, so here we are going to be mention this particular field as a primary key by using which annotation? At id annotation. Okay, so then we are need to create auto generated key, right? Okay, normally we are going to use the auto how we are going to create auto generated key in this table by using auto increment, right? Okay, so here we are going to use at generated values. Okay, so at generated values, so by using this annotations we are going to create an auto generated key. Okay, so that is at generated values. Then we are going to give the strategy, what type of strategy I'm going to pass. Okay, so whether it is a identity or sequence or table. Okay, so I'm just going to use identity. Okay, so here is the, I'm just going to be create auto generated key for this particular field ID. Okay, so that primary key is used to create an at ID annotation is used to create a primary key. Okay, so then I'm just going to be import all the at table annotation, at entity, at table annotations. Now I'm just going to create column annotation. What is at column annotation? Okay, at column annotation is used to create the name which you like on the table. Okay, on the table side, what name you want to create for the column name. Okay, so for example, I'm just going to have the column and annotations on here. Here I'm just going to use name. Okay, so name equal to, instead of student name, I'm just going to give stud underscore name. Okay, so here this is the column name which is going to be create in the database table. Okay, so instead of creating student name or student underscore name, it's going to be create stud underscore name in the database table. Okay, so likewise, I'm just going to create the another one that is called as another column. And here I'm just going to give name equal to stud underscore department dpt. Okay, so now you see we created uh, three variables, that is three columns in which table? Student underscore data table. Okay, so why? Because I'm telling student underscore data. Here you see we change the table name from student underscore info to student underscore data. Now what we are going to do? So likewise the same thing, we are going to create one more entity. The entity name is called student academic info. Okay, so here the entity name which I'm going to create is student academic records. Okay, so here same as I'm just going to create a table for this particular entity, so that I'm just going to use at entity annotation, and then I'm just going to create a table. Okay, so that table and the name equal to what? I'm just going to give the name as academic records. Okay, done. Okay, so now we are going to create some of the variables under this particular student academic record. Okay, so what are the field I'm going to create means I'm just going to create private int id. Okay, so then another variable is what? Private string name. Oh, sorry, 10th marks, right? 10th marks. Okay, so then private string 12th marks. Okay, so then I'm just going to create this column as a primary key, so that I'm just going to use at id annotation, and I want this column should be automatically get incremented whenever I'm going to add the values into this table. So I'm just going to use the at generated values, and then strategy I'm just going to use identity. Okay, so I'm just going to use the strategy, sorry. Okay. So strategy, I'm just going to be make it as identity. That's it. Okay, so here we need to import under which package means Jakarta. Okay, so here I'm just going to be mention this column name. Okay, so I'm just going to customize the column name. Okay, so the column name which I required is 10th marks. Okay, so inside this double quotes I'm going to give 10 underscore 10th score. Okay, 10th underscore score. Okay, likewise I'm going to give at column. Okay, so then so here 12th marks underscore score. That's it. Okay, so we finished the entity classes. Now what we are going to do? So now we are going to make the relationship between these two table. Okay, so okay, here you see student info is having this three field and student academic having this three field. Okay, so now you see we are going to be make the relationship between this table. Okay, so between one table to the other table. Let's see how to create it. So before that, I'm just going to tell you some of the annotations, and then along with this. Okay, so here you see this student info table know the relationship which table is going to be get connected. Okay, so that I'm just going to create one-to-one annotation. Inside this I'm just going to use the another type property which is called as cascade. Okay, so I'm just going to give the cascade type, which is going to be all. So what is a cascade type is all about? Okay, whenever there is any changes is happening on the student info, that changes is going to be happen on the student academic record also. If suppose I'm just going to be perform the insert operations on this particular table, okay, so here that insert operation is going to be happen on the student academic records also. In case if I'm going to perform the update operation, okay, so here the update operation is going to be happen on the student academic record also, or else the delete. Okay, so in case if I'm going to perform the delete operation, the same delete operation is going to be replicate on the student academic record. That's why we are going to give cascade all. Then we are going to give the another thing, that is a fetch. Okay, the fetch type is going to be what? Fetch type, I'm just going to be mention lazy and eager. Okay, so what is a lazy and eager? Okay, so there is a two option. One is lazy, another one is what? Eager. Okay, so if you're going to give the eager means, okay, so when you're going to retrieve this particular record, in case if you're going to retrieve this particular record, student info record, okay, so it's going to be automatically get retrieve the student academic record also. Okay, so that relevant table data is going to be automatically get retrieved. Okay, so it is what the eager type is all about. Lazy type means, okay, so and first it is going to be perform the retrieval operation on this particular record. Whenever it's required, then only this particular query is going to be get executed, and it is going to be retrieve the record from the student academic records. That is what the lazy is. Whenever it's required, then only it's going to be called the child table. Until it is not going to be called the child table records. That is for the lazy is about all about. Eager means what? So when you are going to retrieve the student info record, the relevant record on the child table is going to be get executed, and then it's ready to show the data. But lazy means, so first you are going to retrieve the parent table record, and then it's until you are going to call the student academic records is not going to be retrieve any data from the database. That is what the lazy is all about. Okay, so then we are having the option. Okay, so option we are going to give it as false. Why we are giving the option as false means, okay, so here we are going to tell that, okay, so the foreign key can hold null values or not. Okay, so if you're going to give option equal to false means, what it is going to do is going to tell that the foreign key doesn't hold the null values. The foreign key doesn't hold the null values. So once we return all this thing, then we are going to move to the another annotation, that is what it is called join column. In this join column annotations, we are going to mention so column name. Okay, so here you see that is for holding the foreign key. Okay, so at join column equal to, here you see we are going to create one more column. The column name is what? fk underscore key. Okay, so fk underscore key. So what is the purpose of this join column at column equal to fk underscore key means, so we need to make the relationship between two tables, and we are going to hold the data of this child table. One primary key values we are going to hold it on this parent data table. Okay, so that is why we are creating one more column, and in that column we are going to be mention the link between these two tables. Okay, so here you see we are going to have, for that we are going to use another property called referenced column. Okay, so in this reference column we are going to be mention the column name which is present on the child table. Okay, so after that we are going to be mention the entity name, that is a child class entity name. Okay, so here we are going to mention the child class entity. For example, I'm going to, we created, what is the entity name we created? Student academic record, right? Okay, so we are going to create student academic record on the parent table. Okay, so and then we are going to give the reference for this. Okay, so that is instance. Okay, so student academic. Okay, so only these things we are going to write in the parent table, that is owning table. In the child table, we are not going to write anything. We are just going to hold the values. Okay, so whatever the variables it's having is just going to be hold, because it is unidirectional. Okay, so unidirectional means what? parent table know the details of which table it's get connected. Okay, so here you see all these things we are going to write under which table, in the parent table, that is student info. Okay, so in the child table it doesn't know any information. That is what the unidirectional. In the child table we are going to leave it as it is. In the child table what we did, in the child table, which is at the child table, student academic record, right? Okay, so we are going to leave it as it is. Only three variables it's having, we are going to leave it as it is. So now you hope you understand how to write one to one and then adjoint column. Okay, so we are going to discuss in details. Okay, so in the demo part, what I'm going to do, I'm moving to this student info classes. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to create the instance of this entity of child class, that is academic student academic records. Okay, so I'm just going to give the reference for this STAR. Okay, so star. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so now you see we are going to make the link between one table to the other table. Okay, so we are going to use mapping based on one to one, right? Okay, so one to one. Okay, so inside this one to one, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to be mention the cascade type. Okay, so cascade equal to what type I'm going to use. So I'm just going to be mention all. Cascade type all. Why? Because cascade type merge means what? Update. Persist means what? Uh, Save. Okay, so refresh. Okay, so instead of giving each operation one by one, I'm just going to use all. Okay, so I give the detail here, right? Okay, already what is a cascade type? All is all about. Okay, so then fetch type. Okay, fetch type. I'm just going to be mention which is going to be false. Okay, so here I'm just going to be mention the fetch type, which is fetch type which is going to be eager, right? Okay, so eager means what? Whenever I'm going to retrieve the student info record, it is going to be retrieve the student academic record also. Okay, so here I'm just going to be mention the optional, which is going to be what? False. Okay, so why? Because this foreign key is not going to be hold the null values. Okay, so now you see we are going to create a foreign column. For that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a join column. Okay, so inside this join column, I'm just going to give the name for the column name. Okay, so here you see what is the column name? We given fk underscore key, right? The same name I'm going to use it over here. Okay, so fk underscore key. Okay, so fk underscore key. Then I'm just going to be mention the referenced. Okay, so here you see I'm just going to use the referenced column name equal to here in the child table. What is the for primary key? It is id, right? Okay, so I'm just going to give the id on here. Okay, so this id is nothing but the child column name id. Okay, that's it, we done. Okay, so now you see we make the relationship. Okay, so here we are going to create a constructor, empty constructor with argument and getter and setter as well as a toString. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to right click. Okay, so generate. So first I'm going to create an empty constructor, and then I'm going to create constructor with argument. Generate constructor with argument. I'm just going to choose all this field, and then I'm just going to create another one, that is a getter and setter. Getter and setter. Generate getter and setter for all this field. Okay, so then finally I'm just going to create toString. Generate toString. Okay, so now you see we created complete whatever the things we required for this parent class is done. Then we are moving to the student academic records. Okay, so here also the basic things is done. Then the next one is we are going to create a constructor, empty constructor, constructor with argument and getter and setter. Constructor, empty constructor, and then constructor with argument. I'm just going to give right click, generate, and then constructor. Inside this I'm just going to choose all the constructor, and then I'm just going to choose getter and setter for this. Generate getter and setter. Okay, so then I'm just going to create toString method. Okay, so I'm just going to create toString method. Generate toString. Okay, that's it. So the entity wise, whatever the works we need to do, so everything is done. Okay, so here the next one we are going to move is, so we are going to create a repository. Okay, so for that I'm just going to create an instance interface, which is going to be student info repo. Okay, so here this interface is going to be extends JPA repository. Okay, so extends, and then I'm just going to give JPA repository. Okay, so here you see inside this JPA repository, we need to pass two information. One is the associate table name along with the data type of the primary key. Okay, so here you see this is student info that the repository is for this particular entity. Okay, so student info. So that first we need to give student info. Okay, so then that should be followed by the primary key. Okay, so that is we are using the integer, so that here we need to pass long over here. Okay, so I'm just going to import this particular entity. Student info is done. Okay, so now the next one is I'm just going to create a repository for the another table, which is student academic, right? Student academic repo. Okay, so it's the interface. So here also we are going to use extends keyword, and then I'm just going to put the JPA repository. JPA repository inside this. I'm just going to give the table name is associated for this repository is going to be what? Student academic. Okay, so it is not a student. So student academic records. This is the table, right? So here I'm just going to create student academic records, comma. So here we are going to use a long data type, right? Okay, so that's it. We import it. Okay, so now you see we need to annotate this class with which annotation? Repository. Okay, so here also I'm just going to annotate this interface with which annotation? At repository. Okay, so now you see we done. Okay, so now we are going to write some database configuration information. Okay, so this database configuration, normally how we are going to write it on the Spring JDBC concepts, we are going to write it on the file itself, right? But here in this Spring Data JPA, so we are going to write all these properties under the application.properties file. Okay, so in this application.properties file, we are going to give all the uh, informations, okay, credential for the database. Okay, so first time what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run this for applications on which port means. Okay, so I'm for that I'm going to use the server.port. Okay, so which is going to be 5000. Okay, so server.port, which is going to be what? 5000. Okay, so now the next one, I'm just going to give the some of the database information. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give spring.data source. Spring.data source. Inside this, I'm going to give the URL, username, password. Okay, so for that, this is the common for all this operation. So that what I'm going to do, instead of typing each time, I'm just going to copy this information and I'm pasting over here. Okay, so here what we are going to do in the JDBC operation, first we are going to give the driver name, then we are going to give the URL, username, password. Okay, so here the first we are going to give the URL details. Okay, so it's going to be associated on which URL link. Okay, so normally how we are going to give it on the JDBC operation, same way we need to give. Okay, so JDBC, and then that should be followed by colon, and then MySQL colon double slash localhost, and then port number. Okay, so which port it is running? It's running on 3306. Okay, so that should be followed by the database name. As of now, we are not created the database, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. Okay, so we don't want to give the double quotes over here. Okay, so then after that, data URL is done. Then we are going to give the username, right? Okay, so data source dot username equal to which user, the username is my username is for the database is root. Okay, so and then after the username, I'm going to give the password. Okay, so password, I'm just going to give my password for the database is 1234. Okay, so once we done this URL, username, password, the next one we are going to mention the driver name. Okay, so driver hyphen class. Okay, so driver hyphen class hyphen name. Okay, so here I'm going to give the driver name. Okay, so what is my driver name? Normally what we use, which is com dot mysql dot cj dot jdbc dot jdbc dot driver. Okay, that's it. We given all the credential. As of now, we are not created the database, so that I'm just not mention the database over here. First, we'll do one thing. We'll create the database. Okay, so here I'm just going to create a database. So database name is what? Create database college. Okay, so college. Okay, so database is what? College. Okay, so here I'm creating it. So database is get created. So I'm just going to be mention the database name over here. Done. Okay, so here is the we created the URL, username, password, and then driver name. Then we are going to write the Hibernate properties. Okay, so here the Hibernate, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to mention the same thing. Okay, so Spring dot JPA dot, then we are going to mention that dialect. Okay, so for each database that is a separate dialect. So for MySQL we are having the MySQL dialect, for Oracle we are having the Oracle dialect. Okay, so we are going to mention the dialect over here. Okay, so properties, and then I'm just going to mention the Hibernate dialect. Okay, so for that I'm just going to mention Hibernate. Okay, so then dialect name. Okay, so what is the dialect I'm going to use? So I'm going to use MySQL dialect. Okay, so dialect, so which is equal to org dot hibernate dot dialect name. Okay, so dialect dot MySQL. Okay, so I'm just going to use MySQL 8 dialect. Okay, so then the version. Okay, so then I'm just going to be mention what type of auto operation, DDL auto operation. Okay, so for that Spring dot JPA dot, and then I'm just going to be mention the Hibernate, and then DDL auto. Okay, so DDL auto, DDL hyphen auto, auto. Okay, auto. Okay, so here we are having four properties: create, update. Okay, so create, update, and then validate. Okay, so here I'm just going to use the update operation, so that whenever I'm going to rerun this application, the previous data will be going to be exit. It is not going to be get erased. Okay, so then what we are going to do? So we are going to mention the properties. Okay, so here. For example, I want to, whenever I'm going to run this query, okay, so we want to know uh, which the query is which is created, right? Okay, so for that what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use some other properties which is called as spring dot jpa dot show. Okay, so SQL spring dot jpa dot show hyphen SQL. Okay, so here I'm just going to be mention it as true. Okay, so what is the uses of this particular properties? So whenever the table is going to be get created by using this particular setting which we created on here. Okay, so it's going to be show this the query creations in the terminal window. Okay, so now you see we almost we done it. Okay, so here I'm just give a walkthrough. Okay, so what we created is, so we created entity classes which is going to be annotated with at entity annotations, and then table. We are going to create a customized table name, so that we are going to use the at table annotation inside that. What is the table name? Which table name I want to create? I'm just going to be mention the table name over here. If you not include this, that this Spring Data JPA is going to be created table name based upon the class name which we given on here. So it is going to be create student underscore info. Okay, so I don't want to create a name like that. So that what I did, I want to give the create a name which is student underscore data, so that I'm going to use at table annotation. Okay, to make this particular field as a primary key, so that I'm going to use at ID annotation. And then I want this table is going to be automatically get incremented whenever the new data is going to be get added, so that we are using at generated values. Okay, so then we are going to have the customized table name. We want to create a customized table name. Okay, so instead of creating the table column and name, okay, so student underscore name, I'm going to create a customized column name, that is stud underscore name. Okay, so with the help of at column and annotation, I'm just going to create the customized column and okay name. Okay, likewise, I'm going to create it for the department. Okay, so then you see we are going to make the relations between one table to the other table, that is one to one, so that I'm just going to use annotation which is called one to one. And then here I'm going to use a cascade, and then cascade type which is I'm just going to be mention it as all. So whenever there is any changes is happen on the this particular student info table, and then related it's going to be having the relationship between the student academic records, right? So all the operation is applicable whenever you're going to perform the insert operations on the student info, and the student academic records also get update inserted. So whenever you're going to update the student info table, student academic records also get updated. Whenever you're going to delete the student info, the student academic records also going to be deleted. Okay, so here the fetch type is what? Lazy and eager. There is a two types. The lazy means what, and eager means what? Okay, so eager is, so when you're going to perform the retrieval operations on the student info, is having the relationship to the student academic record, right? This table is also get retrieved. Okay, so that is what the eager is. So if it is going to be lazy means, so if you're going to retrieve the student info, until you're going to write the coding for retrieve the student academic record, it's not going to be hold the data. And after you're going to write the coding for retrieving the record for this particular table, then only it is going to be retrieve the data from the database table. Okay, so that is what the lazy is. Okay, so option false is nothing but, so here I'm telling that, so this table, that is a foreign key. Okay, so here you see we are having the foreign key, right? It is not allowed to hold the null values on the foreign key. Okay, so then we are having the at join column. At join column is nothing but we are going to create one separate column, fk underscore key. So it's going to be refer the column name which is there in the student academic records. Okay, so what is the column name we are having? We are referring, which is ID, student academic records. Okay, so here you see this is a student academic records. We having the ID, so it's referring this particular column name. Okay, so hope you understand this. Then we are going to create a constructor, getter and setter for this. Moving to the student academic record, likewise I am creating a table entity and a table annotation for creating a customized table name along with the end table name I am going to create. Okay, so then we are going to give this particular key as a primary key. Okay, so it's going to be automatically get incremented whenever we are having the two records, 10th and 12th marks record is get inserted. Then here you see I'm just going to create a constructor, empty constructor, getter, setter and two strings. So then we are going to create a repository for this. Now what we are going to do, so now I'm going to run this code and check that table relationship is created as per our expectations or not. Now you see the table coding is get executing. Now you see it's showing this what is the table is get created and all the operations by using the show SQL commands. Okay, now you see the port is running on 5000. Now what we are going to do, we are going to check on our database how the table is get created. Okay, so here I'm just going to move to this reverse engineering. Next, here I'm going to give the credential 1234 and then click OK. Next, so what is the table name which we created on here? The table name we are created is college, right? Okay, so here is the what is the table name we created? We created the table name is, sorry, college, database name is what? College. Okay, so now I'm going to choose the college over here. So then I'm just going to click next, finish, execute, and then next. Now you see the table is get created. Here you see this is a two table is get created. So here you see this table, that is student data. Okay, so is a table is associated with the academic records based upon the foreign key which is having on the student data is associated with the academic underscore records of the column ID. Okay, so here is the student info. What is the table customized table name we created? Student underscore data, right? Okay, so here is the student underscore data is created. Under the student underscore data, what are the columns we are having? ID, student name, and then student department and FK key, which is going to be associated with the academic student academic records ID table. Okay, so here is the okay is associated. Why we are having the academic underscore record? So because we are having the customized table name. Okay, so what is the customized name? Academic underscore records. Okay, so here is the academic underscore records. Now you see the relationship is get created. Now the next thing is we are going to make an endpoint for this particular controller and we are going to perform the insert and retrieval operations. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create, I'm just stopping it first. Okay, so then create new. Okay, so here I'm just going to create student controller. I'm just going to perform only the two operation. One is insert operation, another one is retrieval operation. Okay, so student controller. Okay, so under this I want to make endpoint to this particular controller, so I'm just going to use a request mapping. So under this I'm just going to be mention the endpoint for this particular controller. Okay, so inside this double quotes, I'm just going to be mention slash student. Okay, so then I'm just going to make this one is going to be a REST controller, so that I'm just going to annotate it with at REST controller. Okay, so here I'm going to create an endpoint for this insert and retrieve operation. Okay, so first I'm going to put post mapping. So inside this, I'm just going to be mention the endpoint for this retrieval operation. Sorry, adding operation add. Okay, so here you see I'm just going to put public. Okay, so under this I'm just going to whenever I'm going to insert. Okay, so it need to retrieve the return the record back, right? Okay, so that I'm just going to give mention the entity name. Okay, so here the entity name is what student info. Here we don't want to mention the table name which is created, right? We need to deal only with the entity name. Okay, so that is going to be take care of this particular thing is going to be take care of this Spring Data JPA. We don't want to worry about it. Okay, so here we need to mention add method name. Okay, add student info. Add student info. Okay, so here inside this, what type of data we are going to be passed? We are going to be passed the student info data, right? Okay, so student info data SI. Okay, so STUD info. Here, we are going to use a special annotation which is called as a request body. We are going to transfer the entire data, right? Okay, so that we are going to use a which annotation means. So we are going to use the annotation is called as a request body. Okay, done. Okay, so then I'm just going to write what this particular method is going to do. Okay, so this method is going to when it is receiving this particular call to this particular endpoint, it need to transfer the call to this backend services method. In the services class, we are going to insert the data into the database, okay, through the repository. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move to the services class. Okay, so first I'm just going to create the services class for all the two operations. Okay, so then we'll move to the controller. Okay, so here I'm just going to write student service. Okay, so this class should be annotated with at service annotation. Okay, so here you see this service is what stereotype annotation. Okay, so here just I'm just going to this services class is act as a mediator between the controller and repository. In the repository only we are having all the CRUD operation, insert operation, update operation, retrieval operation, everything is written, right? So first we need to mention the repository name over here so that we are going to perform this operation. Okay, so here you see I'm just going to mention the parent class repository name which is called as a student repo. What is the repo name? Student info repo. Student info repo. Okay, so I'm just going to mention the student underscore repo. So we need to use at auto aid annotation. At auto aid annotation. Okay, done. Okay, so here we are going to inject all the methods, default method which is there in the repository, JPA repository. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to create a method public. Okay, so student info. Okay, so then add student. Okay, so here what type of data we are going to receive? We are going to receive student info. Okay, so in case if you don't understand all those things, I request you to watch uh, my previous video which is going to be CRUD operations on the Spring Data JPA. Please watch it and come back to this video so that you can understand clearly. Okay, so what is the repository, why it is doing all those things. Okay, so here I'm just going to pass student info. Okay, right. Okay, so here under the services class, what we are doing, okay, so we are going to add the data. Okay, so first we are going to write the return statement. Okay, so here we are going to call this particular repo that is dot add. Okay, sorry, save. Okay, so save. Inside this, I'm just going to pass the values which I am receiving for this particular method. Okay, so that's it. We perform the insert operation is done. Now you see we need to make a call to this controller. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to use this pulling this services class over here. Okay, so you know this auto add annotations can be done in three way. One is by using constructor, another one is going to be using the field type, another one is by using the setter getter. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use the constructor type this time. Okay, so I'm just going to be pull the student services. student services, student services. Here I'm not going to create auto add annotation. I'm not going to put the auto add annotations on the field type. I'm just going to mention on the constructor type. So create constructor for this particular class. Sorry, create constructor. So on this particular instance, done, right? Okay, so this is the constructor for this particular class. Here you see we are passing student service as an argument. Here that values is assigned from local variable to the class variable. So here I'm just going to use at auto add annotation. At auto add annotation. Okay, so now you see we are going to acc- access all the method which is there in the services class. Okay, so from the controller we are going to call the services class. Okay, so here you see I'm just going to use a services class method. What is a service class? To access a service class we need to use this name, right? Student services dot what method we are having in the services class for adding the operations. Method name is what? Add students. Okay, so here under this I'm just going to put the add students, and then inside this values which I'm going to give is student info. Okay, student info is going to refer stud info. Okay, so it is going to hold the data, right? Okay, so here is I'm just going to pass the stud info. That's it. Okay, so now you see the next thing we need to is we need to write the return statement over here. Okay, return student info. That's it. So we done the insert operation. The next one is going to be retrieve operation. Okay, so inside this I'm just going to perform the retrieve operation. Retrieve all or retrieve nothing. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use a public. Okay, so here I'm going to return list of data. Okay, so list of student info. Okay, so entire data we are going to retrieve. Okay, so here all get all records get all records. Okay, so inside this I'm just don't want to pass any values. Okay, it's just I'm just going to pass the empty argument. Okay, so why? Because we are going to return entire data. Okay, so then I'm going to make a call to the student repo. Okay, so student repo dot so find all method. Okay, so here this find all is going to be written the entire data, whatever the data we are having on this particular student info is info repo is referring which class, which table? Student info. This whatever the data we are having the student repo table is going to be written. Okay, so here I'm going to use the find all. Okay, so here I'm just going to make a call to this particular method in the controller class. Okay, so how to make a call to this particular controller? Okay, so here is easy. It is a get mapping, right? Okay, so get mapping. Okay, so inside this, I'm just going to be mention the details. Okay, so that is retrieve all. Okay, so retrieve or get all data. All get all okay, so get all data, all students data. Okay, anything. Okay, so here is going to be used which access specifier, public access specifier. Okay, so here I'm just going to use the list, and then I'm just going to mention what type of data is going to be passed. The set of data is going to be what? Student info. Here I'm going to use get all records. Okay, we don't want to pass any values. Simply we are going to call this particular method student services dot what method we are having on the services class, which is called as get all records, right? Okay, so here I'm just going to call get all records. Okay, so then I'm just going to put semicolon. Okay, so I'm just going to import this. That's it. So the next one is retrieve the students by ID. Okay, so here for that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move to the services class. Here, I'm just going to use a response. Okay, so response entity. Okay, so public. Okay, so here I'm just going to use response entity. Okay, so response entity, it is going to be return student info type, and then get student by ID. We can give any name. Okay, so get student by ID, but we need to retrieve the student by ID, right? So that we are going to use, we need to pass some values ID, right? Okay, so inside this, I'm just going to use the return, and then here I'm going to call student repo dot find by ID. Inside this, I'm just going to be pass the ID. Here, what I will do, okay, so here, so I'm just going to, instead of calling the response entity on here, I'm just going to call the response entity on the controller side. Okay, so here, why it is throwing error means, okay, so here we need to surround this by using optional. Okay, so why? Because to avoid null pointer exception, or else, so what we need to do, so we are going to use dot or else, or else we need to pass a null over here. Okay, so we need to surround it like this. Okay, we need to surround it like this. In case if you not use uh or else means why it is throwing error. Find by ID student repo or else null. Why what happened? Int provided int. Okay, so what happened? Oh, okay, so here I need to pass the integer. Okay, so integer. Okay, so integer, and also here is also integer. Okay, so now you see the error will go. Okay, so is it? No, it is not get updated. Okay, so here also we need to pass now integer. Let's change to long. Yes, it's gone. Okay, now you see we are going to perform retrieve the students by their ID. Okay, so now we are going to make a call to this particular method on the controller. Okay, so here in the controller, I'm just going to use get mapping. Okay, so here inside this, I'm just going to pass get by ID. Okay, so here I'm going to receive the values from the URL, so that I'm just going to be pass ID over here or std ID. Okay, so here under this particular method, I'm going to write public. Okay, so then student info. Okay, so get student by ID. Okay, so inside this, I'm just going to receive this value by using which annotation means. So I'm by using path variable annotation. Okay, so here you see this student ID is going to be what? Integer data type. So I'm just going to be use a long over here, long, and then I need to pass the exact name which I mentioned over here, student ID, right? Okay, so under this particular method, I'm going to call return. Okay, so here you see we're having the method which so we return the method in the services class, student services dot. So then uh, in this inside this student services method, which method we are calling? We are calling student get student by ID. Okay, so here I'm going to call this particular method. Under this particular method, I'm going to pass this value student ID. Okay, that's it. We done. Okay, so here, as I already told that, okay, so here we are going to use a response entity, right? Okay, so return type as response entity. Okay, so response entity. Okay, so here I'm going to pass the type of response. It is going to be written as student info. Okay, so here we can also write it in the previous way, which we written without response entity. Here, why I'm writing like this means, so to give the different flavor of the coding, right? Okay, so here we are going to use a response entity. Okay, so what type of data it is going to be written? Okay, student services is going to be written. What type of data? Get all, get by ID is going to be written student info, right? So here what I'm going to do, so when we are calling this particular method student services get student by ID, it is going to be written student info, so that we are going to collect the student info, and we are going to store the values in the variable called sinfo. Okay, sinfo equal to student services dot get info. So we are going to pass the values. Okay, so here inside this return, I'm just going to pass the values. Okay, so here I'm going to use new response entity. Okay, so inside this I'm just going to pass the values. Okay, so here I'm going to pass the values student info dot comma and status. Okay, so here I'm just going to be pass the status of the HTTP. Okay, HTTP status code is nothing but, so it's record found, right? Okay, so here I'm just going to be pass student status code dot found, HTTP status dot, and okay, okay, so it's having the values, right? That's it. Okay, so this is the one way. Okay, so here we done it, we done our code, we are going to run this code now. Okay, now you see it's successfully executed. Okay, so now we are going to test this by using Postman. So for that, I'm just moving to this Postman. So we are going to write the endpoint as well as the data. Okay, so here first we are going to insert the data. The endpoint is local post colon the port number, which is going to be 5000, and then here we are going to make a call to this controller. What is the endpoint for this particular controller? Student, right? Okay, so student, and then I'm just going to make a call to this particular endpoint for adding the data slash add, right? Okay, so slash add. Okay, so I'm just going to add something meaningful names as add student. Okay, so I'm just stop and rerun. So add student. Okay, so it's running. I'm just going to use the endpoint add student. Inside this body and draw, inside this I'm just going to use a JSON. Okay, so here we are going to pass the values. Okay, so first you see we need to pass the student info. ID is auto incremented, so that I'm going to leave it as it is. So first I'm going to copy this student name. Okay, so here I'm going to pass the values, which is going to be what? Vinod Kumar Selvarasan. Okay, so then I'm going to pass the next set of values, which is student department, which is going to be what? Computer science. Computer science. And then I'm going to pass the next values. So here is the next one is going to be refer which record? Student academic records. Okay, so for that, what reference variable we given? Star, right? Okay, so it's referring the another table. So for referring the another table, how to write means, so you need to put the reference values. So under this, we are having only one set of record we are passing. Just put the flower bracket and move to the student academic record. Inside this, we're having two variables, three variables. One is ID, which is going to be automatically get incremented. So here is the, we are going to be passed 10th marks. And then here I'm going to pass the values is going to be what? 92. Okay, so here you see it is going to be string, right? Okay, so we need to pass it in double quotes. Okay, so then we are going to pass the next variable, which is going to be what? 12th records. Okay, so inside this, I'm just going to pass the 12th records, and then here I am going to pass 90. Okay, so that's it. We are going to send the request now. Check it whether the data is get executed or not. Okay, so before that, I'm just going to show you the record which we are having on the this particular uh, database. Okay, so what is a database? It is a college, right? Okay, so here you see we are having two records. One is academic record. There is a no table is present, and then student table. Here also there is a no record is found. Okay, so now you see I'm just going to click the send button. Okay, so now you see our data is going to be get executed. So now we are going to refer the same thing on the student data. Here you see the data which we pass on here. Okay, so and also it's holding the primary key, foreign key link to the another table, academic records. Okay, so here you see one is referring is nothing but the first student's record, Vinod Kumar, right? Okay, so then the next one, I'm just going to be pass the next student's record, Ashok Kumar. Okay, so here I'm just going to be pass the values 93, 91. Here I'm just going to be pass the next one is going to be what? 80, 98. Okay, so here I'm just going to be pass the another student's record, which is going to be mechanical. Okay, so I'm just going to send the record. Now you see this record also get inserted. Now we are having the two more records on this particular table. Okay, two, and then here you see two records. So now we are going to perform the retrieval operation. For retrieval operation, what I'm going to do? So I'm just going to use the endpoint. Okay, so what is the endpoint for the retrieval operation? Here you see we are having the get all method. Okay, so get all method is used to retrieve the entire records. Okay, so here student slash get all. Okay, so here you see what is the endpoint. Okay, so here to make a call to this controller, we are having the student endpoint, and then we are having the another method which is called as a get all. Okay, so I'm just going to be send the request. Okay, so why we are getting this error message means I'm going using the post over here. I'm just going to use a get and then click the send. Here you see we are getting the entire record, whatever the data we are having on the particular database. Okay, so now the next one is we are going to get the students by their ID. Okay, so for that I'm just going to use a get in by ID endpoint, and then I'm just going to be pass the values, the ID of the particular student. Okay, so I'm just going to be sent. Okay, so here you see we're having two records over here. Okay, two records. Okay, so here I'm just going to remove this. Here you see totally two records. Now we are passing get by ID, and then we are passing the ID, and then click the send. Okay, now you see we got our record. Okay, so if I'm going to pass two, we are going to get the records. That's it. So hopefully you understand what is one-to-one. So we perform get operations and then insert operation. Hopefully you like these videos. If you like this video, please click the likes button and please click the subscribe and bell button. Thank you. Please don't forget to share this video with your friends.